welcome to a new episode of Gardeners of the Earth with me, Francis Peck, where I go into my work on the European Horizon Garden project that's actually wrapping up this month. I'm here sitting on top of Bogota at Montserrat. We just finished the last day of our Living Data Conference. It's a conference organized by different biodiversity organizations. We have GBIF, OBIS, and there was, of course, organized here locally by the Colombian Biodiversity Informatics Facility. So it was really great, all these organizations coming together. Of course, also GeoBon, and I know I'm actually it should be here. There was yes, of course, TETWIC. That's the standards for biodiversity information analysis. So at this conference, I propose to think about standards actually for forensic use of biodiversity analysis. Buenos dias. In the name of Pierre and myself, welcome to this session on biodiversity forensics. Research, because biodiversity loss is one of the great challenges that our generation is facing here on planet Earth, and this is the main point of this conference, bringing everybody together to improve standards. How do we collect the data? How do we reason about the provenance of the data, which is of course vital when we're going to analyze who's responsible for the state of biodiversity at certain regions. So it was a big pleasure to organize this together with Pierre Bonnet, who was the coordinator, still the coordinator for wrapping up the Garden project, and start this discussion on forensics. So I took care of the introduction for the session and sharing my view on biodiversity forensics, comparing it also to my previous experience in working on forensic DNA analysis. On the next slides, I will kind of make a brief analogy. Next slide, please. Between doing this kind of forensics. So a little side note, a good 10 years ago, I actually did my PhD on forensic DNA analysis. And so that's really my background. So for me, this is a little bit coming home. So that's why I'm making this kind of comparison between the work we're now doing at NICE and analyzing the crops and the work I previously did on DNA. But using this kind of state of the data to kind of go over this process of having analysis ready, hypothesis ready, then policy ready, and finally having it forensics ready. Then we had sessions also on tracking provenance, traceability of biodiversity observations, how we're supposed to package it, because GBIF, for example, they are putting all the data together, but they're actually not responsible for maintaining the data per se, to be sure that we keep all this data in place, also for the future, to be able to do these kinds of very vital analysis. There was also a place for business. Of course, I was so happy that this was taking place in Colombia. It was first real coffee origin visit for me personally. Also enjoyed learning about cacao. There were presentations on cacao businesses and how they are moving forward with sustainable agriculture, and also for coffee actually. There's even from Nespresso this big initiative for agroforestry to include a lot more tree life around the coffee plantations, which at least when we're observing birds, you already see that the biodiversity is improving just by the simple measurements of planting more trees close to the coffee plants. And so this already increases biodiversity just by an active human effort, but then you're also attracting a lot more bird life, and other types of species interactions can take place in these improved coffee plantations. So there was so much to learn here from colleagues to discuss how we move all these things forward. And Bogota is really just a great place. I mean, we have here on the top, we see Bogota down there, Montserrat. So you see I'm still very close to the top where there's the sanctuary there. We came here with the teleferic, which is a great way of going from the 2,600 altitude level of Bogota to, this is around 3,100 I think. So actually now just walking down, which is a little bit easier than walking up. So Bogota, great place. I've heard that the World of Coffee 2027 will actually take place, so I would be very eager to come back here. Next year, the World of Coffee conference is actually taking place very close to Maïs Botanic Garden in Brussels. So then you can come and visit the coffee plants that we're growing there. So it's been a magnificent experience here. Also got to see the keynote of Sabrina Leonelli again, with whom I did a podcast on the importance of metadata to help science in general progress, but also these kinds of analysis on biodiversity. So too many people to mention that I had interesting talks with, but it was just a great time. So I hope sharing this small segment here helps you give insight in how we biodiversity informaticians or taxonomists, how we get together, discuss the state of our biodiversity, discuss how we collect this data and think forward, think not just to help governments, policymakers, farmers, everyone to just know what the state of our biodiversity is, but so by monitoring, by knowing, because if you don't know, we don't actually know precisely at what rate we're losing species are getting extinct. We just don't know it because we have so few measurements on it, and when we have measurements, it's usually about the species that people like the most. Like me, I know a lot about coffee, but I don't know that much about the ugly bugs that like to live around the coffee plants and that can help give us insights in the state of a certain ecosystem where we're growing the coffee, where we're depending on the coffee plants being happy as well, so we don't need to treat them with pesticides, so we can enjoy organic coffees, etc., etc. So there's so much value for business in knowing this also, and the implications just touch everybody. It touches our health. You know, nature is also a reserve for parasites, viruses, and by analyzing the biodiversity, we know where the potential sinks are. That's, you know, where you might have more of pathogens or viruses residing and posing a risk for us humans or other types of species, whether it be animals or plants. So there's so much that is getting connected by a conference like Living Data, and I was truly honored to be able to be here and thankful that the organizers allowed me to have this biodiversity forensics session as a starting point to think about the importance of biodiversity analysis, not just for driving, you know, data-driven biodiversity, data-driven decisions, but also for accountability, because, you know, we're also messing things up on, you know, a grand scale up to neglect. So some of these things are going to courts, and not just, you know, for coffee or cacao traders, but just for ecocide destroying our environment. And when it gets to court, we need the biodiversity scientists, like me for example, to be able to show how we got to those findings. So hope this was insightful for you. Thanks for following this bit on biodiversity informatics, and also thanks for the Guardian project that got me started on doing this kind of work. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you next time.